All right, we are going to get started. And I can't believe that everybody is here. Thank you. And for you folks online, bear with us. We got a bunch of folks that came in from, I might as well be overseas to make it here today. And so just if you're online, know that our schedule is going to start as normal from the people to the front going to the back, and then you're going to have a little bit of mix up in what you're thinking is going to happen. So just watch who went, and as we go forward today, we have some presenters at the banquet as well. So welcome to the 15th annual WAISC Western Alaska Interdisciplinary Science Conference. I've said that enough in my life enough. On that. My name is Goddard, and I'm a faculty here in the Sustainable Energy Program of Environmental Studies at the Bristol Bay campus. And I want to take this second to welcome you. Really glad you're here. I know you went through a lot to get here, and we're going to talk more about that. And give yourself a round of applause for that. Mercy. And the last airlines, if you're listening right now, thanks for bringing in that second plane. We really, really appreciate it. You did us a solid there. I want to take this second to tip my hat and my heart to Dr. Todd Radenbach, who is the founder of the WAISC conference, and he passed away in 2020 if you didn't know him, but most of you do. He was an avid scientist and advocate for the spirit of learning. He embodied this conference and the forum and the sharing of knowledge and science, and did so much for this region, and loved Dillingham, and came here and spent his life in Dillingham and gave it to it for the betterment of this area. He was my mentor when I first got here. I was the only faculty here with Todd, besides Gabe Dunham over here. So thanks for all of your guidance, and if not for Gabe, I'd have no idea what I'm doing to try to run this conference. I still don't. So make sure that you keep that in your head. We're doing our best here to make things work, and how that went. So it was WAISC was founded on the spirit of community and sharing of science in Western Alaska, and now we've spread it from Western Alaska to all of Alaska. But we're still talking about things that are relevant to this region and relevant to rural Alaska and all the communities that reside within. And it's really good to have everybody here. I'm originally from West Virginia, and I came here in 2019 to work this position. And frankly, I've lived in Alaska before, but I lived on the road system. And I frankly had no idea what I was getting into, even though I thought I did. I was like, oh, I lived in Alaska. Totally different. Right. And for those of you that live in rural, it takes a couple of years to really get that. It doesn't happen in a trip, and it doesn't happen in 10 trips until you're there and you're weathered in, and things are expensive, and the sense of community is so tight and close to each other. So I could have never understood what it took to teach out here and function out here and deliver a conference out here. If not for living here for so long. So I'm really thankful for that opportunity. I'm thankful for the community of Dillingham, and I really appreciate you taking me in as part of your home. So thank you for that. Let's see. Schedule events. There might be an error. Obviously, things got pushed back, and we have two locations between here and the Bristol Inn. So if you're scheduled to talk with the Bristol Inn after we're done with this session, or with me talking, Chandler will guide your way up there. And if anybody has any luggage, you need help getting up there, maybe help with that as well. Here, once we get things started on my end, I can help shuttle some stuff up there, or Chris, wherever he's at, he can help run things to the inn for you and help you with that. So he's around, we'll take care of you. We couldn't do this without all of the help of everybody that has been here for that. Tav, Amu, and Alaska Sea Grant. If not for them, none of this would be possible. So thanks for all your support and all your help from Tav and faculty here, Chandler and Devin. We're all here to meet your needs and do whatever you can. And they certainly stepped up and helped in this. Ashley, I want to mention you. as well. And Dave, RT, thanks so much for getting us here today. Let's see. Bristol Wind. If you're online, bear with us. And so yeah, we held this live, and you guys responded vigorously. It's just amazing how many of you showed up to be here in Dillingham and be with us here today. And inside of your packet is a printout and a map that sort of shows you we're going to have a banquet tonight. So there may be a couple presentations as we get pushed forward at the banquet tonight. Maybe not. We're going to figure that out as we go. Thanks for your patience in that. And if you need a restroom, there's 2 different locations. When you come out of this and go into the hallway, you can go to the right, and there are 2 of them there. And they don't lock. There's just a little occupied sign, and people never remember to put it in one way or another. Okay, which is fine. Just knock before you go in. We have it to where it's whatever gender can go in. Either one does have a urinal, the other one doesn't. But just knock and do your best. And there's also another restroom at the other end of the halls. Another set of those. Emergency exits are in both directions. You can go out to the left, hit a door going that way. You can go through the kitchen and hit a door that way, and or you can go through the front entrance. In the event of an emergency, anything of that nature, we would just ask that everybody gathers down here in the lower lot and make sure everybody's all right and accounted. Okay, so there's a map that will show you how to get to the elementary school where the banquet is tonight. And in the community, in the spirit of that, hopefully we don't have a whole lot planned for that, except for a little bit of music and a little bit of talking. But we are here to be with each other and talk to each other and learn from each other. So sit with somebody you don't know tonight and learn about them. Emergency exits, Applied Science Center. If you've got anything going on at the Applied Science Center, it is across the street, big blue building. Or a big blue roof, I should say. Not the big blue building is the police station. They might take you in as well if you're not there. Tomorrow night, there is going to be a social event. I hope that everybody will show up for that. We're going to have pizza and wings. Again, if you have a dietary restriction, we've done our best with the lunch. And you do, and things don't always turn out as you needed. So I do apologize in advance if you have one and there's something here that you can't eat. It's what we have, and let us know how we can. The AC in the store is that way, right across from the big blue roof building where the Applied Science Center is. So it's very close, very good walking distance. We do have some fruit and bananas and stuff for you. And let's see. If you don't have your presentation on a thumb drive, please try to get it on one. It's going to make this flow of things much smoother. Do that for us. And everything's going to be recorded. Oh, now we're up to tab. Does anybody have any questions for me right now? Okay, social event will be from 6 to 9 tomorrow, and we will have shuttles running for that until 9 o'clock. After 9, you're on your own, but there is a taxi service, and you've got that information inside of the packet that we gave you today. The one that's highlighted in yellow is the only one that I know will answer their phone. That's the truth. All right.
So I just have a few logistical aspects to talk about. First off, there's Starlink that we have available if people need Wi-Fi. It's the Eye of Sauron, and then the password's up there. And so that's only here. It won't be at Bristol Inn. And we will be shuttling back and forth between here and Bristol Inn, and we're going to start right away doing that. So in your packets, your swag bags is a schedule. Same agenda as is online. And we're going to try to catch up with some time. We're like half an hour behind right now. So we're just going to start with the schedule and just go down and probably miss that first break at 1:50 and just going through. But that means the 2 locations will be a little bit off. So just bear with us. And be flexible at this opening stages. Yeah, and that's the main thing. And then I'll talk to people who are presenting here, or who stays here.
Okay, and if you're going to the Bristol Inn, you're welcome to meet up with Chandler. He's back there in the green shirt and ready to assist you at the end. Thank you so
I'm
much.
gonna walk up there in a couple minutes. Gather.
There is food in the back.
Are these things being recorded, so the ones we don't see
Yes.
can watch later? How do I decide?
Where poster for
When you go out this hall, it'll be to the left. There's a room back there with, oh yeah, there's vendors in the back. With locally made arts and crafts. There's some really good stuff back there. And they'll be there today and there'll be some more coming in tomorrow. So make sure you go back in there and visit them. And that's where we'll be doing the poster presentations and folks talking. We'll probably do the posters tomorrow. So don't sweat today. Make sure you visit the vendor. They come something. Make local and Dillingham.
Let's hear it for Eric.
Okay, you're up in Bristol. Okay.
No, don't share it yet.
Yeah.
Where's she from? She's from.
That one. And then.
Yeah, yeah, I was the Marine Vice Program Agent on here for.
I have one extra.
No, I still work for last year.
Yeah, I got everyone email.
On right now. It already started. Yeah. Okay.
All right, that looks good, Tev.
Anyone you want? So actually, one thing I will say before we start is, if there are any questions during, please hold them. And if we have time at the end, they are very short presentations, just 15 minutes, and then 5-minute question and transition time. So if you do have questions, please hold them till the end. See if we are able to do them at the end. Thank you.
Great. Excited to be here with everyone and kicking off the presentation portion of the conference. My name is Harper Baldwin. I'm a second-year master's student with the Arctic Coastal Geoscience Lab at UAF. And this is a presentation on parts of my master's work, which focuses on Bering Sea Storminess, assessing past impacts and future hazards utilizing Indigenous knowledge and flood mapping. So I'd like to start with a quick personal introduction. I was born and raised in Brattleboro, Vermont, and then after I graduated college in 2019, I moved up to Fairbanks to do some field work in the interior. And I started working with the Arctic Coastal Geoscience Lab in 2020. So I've been working there for 3 years, and with that lab, I've had the opportunity to conduct field work in a number of locations in Bristol Bay and Pribilof, including Good News Bay, Kodiak, Twin Hills, Dillingham, Cleve Lock, so now I'd like to move into a description of my work, which focuses on Bering Sea Storminess, as I said. And to start that off, I'd like to ground us in 2 events that occurred in the last 10 years that were really big in the region, and I bet a lot of people here remember them or experienced them. And these are the 2011 and 2022 Bering Sea storms. So these were two record-breaking storms in the Bering Sea in only the last approximately 10 years. And the first one occurred in November of 2011, and I have some satellite imagery here of the storm. And the record that it broke was for minimum central surface pressure. And it bottomed out at 944 millibars, which was the lowest recorded in the Bering Sea. However, that record was broken by the 2022 storm in September of this last year. It bottomed out at 937 millibars. So these storms shared a number of similar characteristics, such as their track and intensity, and they caused a lot of damage on the western coast of the state. And a presidential disaster declaration was issued for both in accordance with that. So after both of these storms occurred, coastal scientists wanted to know exactly how bad they were. And one of the biggest ways that we do that is by measuring high water marks. High water marks indicate the highest point that the water reached. This includes run-up. And you can see here, I've pointed out places where we have field data from the 2022 storm in blue, locations where we have field data from the 2011 storm in red, and locations where we have water level gauges in the region in black. So you can see we have a lot of information about how high the water got, but we're also missing a lot. This is a huge coastline. There's a lot of space in between these points. And if you look to the right, you can see that there are a lot of places, even within the locations that I've highlighted here, where we don't have data from the 2011 storm, and most places do not have a permanent water level gauge. So there's still a lot of questions about how storms impact the coast. And this is important to understand how past storms have impacted the coast, because that helps us predict how future storms will impact the coast. This is incredibly important because we project that the severity of storms will increase with climate change. In addition, other environmental changes such as increased temperature and decreased sea ice and permafrost could increase the severity of storm impacts on communities. And also these storms affect rural coastal communities where data on past impacts is limited and access to emergency resources is also limited. Therefore, research to characterize historical storm impacts and identify at-risk infrastructure and livelihoods on the western coast of Alaska is necessary. So for my work, I'm working on putting together a historical chronology of storms in two sites in the Bristol Bay region. The first is in the southern Kuskokwim Bay, actually, Good News Bay. And the second is really in the central Bering Sea, St. Paul Island, which is one of the 5 Pribilof Islands. And both of these storms have experienced historical storminess and are important. It's important to understand how storms have impacted both locations for community decision-making within each community, and also for projecting these potential changes out to other communities in the region. So then I'd like to move into what we do after there's been a storm. So when we know there's been a storm and we can go out and measure those high water marks, like I talked about, what do we do? First, we can use our survey drone to create orthomosaics, as you can see here, and delineate debris lines based on these orthomosaics. This is a debris line delineated from survey drone imagery at Antone Lake on St. Paul Island. We can also use time-lapse imagery. Many of the communities that we work with have time-lapse cameras permanently installed, and we can see the normal water levels and compare them to high water levels. We can also qualitatively assess impacts with drone footage. So one of the big coastal hazards in St. Paul is marine debris. And this video is a drone video that we took after the 2022 storm, and it shows really just the extent of marine debris in one location on the island. So this extends much further than just this video, but you can see the huge impact that it's had. And finally, most importantly, we conduct a GPS survey of high water marks with our highly precise GPS system that measures the horizontal accuracy of the point to about 2 centimeters. So we know exactly how high the water got based on those survey marks. And you can see in this photo how clear the debris lines were that we were working with. So it's very clear exactly how much the run-up came up onto the salt lagoon that was taken. So after if we can't go out and measure a storm, if it didn't just happen, what do? One of the ways that we try to understand past storms is by looking at storm reporting databases. So we look back in the NCDC databases and try to come up with a number of storms, the number of storms that have hit a community and how high the water got. We also look at scholarly papers that have past storm records. We look at field campaigns from previous storms. We can also look to remote sensing of flood events with satellite imagery or just photos and videos of events. So I show here how I found 2 images of a 1966 flood in St. Paul and a video of a 2016 flood in St. Paul also. And using this, you can kind of tell how high the water got, and you can go out with our GPS unit and take measurements of those high water marks for storms that might have happened 60 years ago in the case of the 1966 flood. But that only gives us a certain level of understanding of what has occurred in a location. How we can really deepen our understanding of past storm records is through utilizing local and indigenous knowledge to assess past storm. So that's one of the big goals of my work. And I was fortunate enough to get to interview 10 participants in both of my thesis sites who shared with me their memories of past storms and their memories of past high water marks, which really helps us understand past impacts better. In the interview, I worked from broad scale environmental change questions down to memories of storm events that I had already identified with that storm literature review that I described. And then I would ask if there was any other storms that my participants remembered that I hadn't asked them about. And during this time, I had a bunch of maps out on the table so we could all reference high water marks to specific locations on a map. And then after we've conducted those interviews, we go out and conduct field surveys to make flood maps. The first step of this is to measure past storm height. Like I said, someone in our interview process told us that the 2011 storm in November reached the second step of his stairs. So one of my colleagues, Sarah Datson, is there measuring the height of that storm with, again, 2 centimeter accuracy. So you can really nail down exactly how high the water got. Secondly, we do a survey of critical infrastructure in the community. Here we're measuring the elevation of burial ground in Good News Bay so that we can assess its vulnerability to flooding. And thirdly, we also conduct first floor height surveys in flood prone areas. So here, Sarah Datson is measuring the ground surface. Environmental coordinator in Good News Bay is measuring the distance from the ground surface to the first floor of this building. So now we can really determine whether or not that building is at risk to future flood events based on our knowledge of the height of the first floor. And then we put it all together into a final product flood map. These include highlighting at-risk infrastructure. We show past flood heights. In this case, the orange is one flood height, the yellow is another flood height, and the blue and purple signify potential future flood heights. This is a map for St. Paul, and so I'm mapping 4 different floods here from the 1966, 1989, 2016, and 2022. And in a really extreme event, you can see that there's a lot of infrastructure at risk, including the fish processing plant, some harbor warehouses, the health clinic, potentially the school and store, and several residences. Another product that I'll be working on for my thesis is our storm narratives. And these are written narratives that incorporate local and indigenous knowledge with the instrumentation data that we have. The content of these will kind of mirror the interview structure that I conducted. So I'll start by describing broad scale environmental changes and then narrow down into some case study storms that I've chosen for both locations. In Good News Bay, I've chosen the 2011 and 2022 storms. And in St. Paul, I've chosen the 1966 and 2022 storms. And I'll also incorporate quotes from interview participants. The goal of this is really to incorporate the experiential part of storms, that these aren't just, flood heights. These are really impactful experiences, sometimes traumatic experiences for residences. And we want to incorporate that into this data product. And then the use for these storm narratives is that they can be incorporated into tribal hazard mitigation plans. They can be used in funding proposals and given to engineering firms. And they're also just in addition to the written history of environmental impacts in both locations. So in terms of the broader impacts, we're looking to expand flood histories. And like I said, there are only so many points on this map where we actually have information from past storms. And this is just in the last 10 years. So we're hoping to increase the spatial and temporal resolution of our historical high water mark data set to improve coastal resilience, address local research priorities, and help communities prepare for climate change. Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much. Very interesting work. So presumably you selected these two storms because of their size, because of their broad impact. Obviously, between 2011, 2022, there were other storms of often regional, but not quite that large impact. Any thoughts about incorporating that kind of information? I'm thinking of the 2013 storms. 2000 was 18 or 19, Shishmarsh, Kotzebue area.
I mean, I think that's one of the takeaways that I've had from this work is that there are really, the effects of storms are really localized. And so those storms, people didn't even really remember them. When I tried to ask about, do you remember this storm event in 2013? And, they just weren't really strong memories for people. And so we really have focused on the ones that really stayed in people's memories and everything,
So for the communities you worked in,
Yeah.
that if you did this in Kotlik, people would remember
yeah.
2013.
Right, and that really highlights the reason why we need to do these really localized surveys so that we understand exactly the kind of storm that will impact Good News Bay specifically.
Great, thank you.
Okay, in the spirit of timeliness, we are all going to be together at banquets, and we could probably take one or two questions at the end of everybody, and then we'll move on. Does anybody else have any other questions for Harper? Okay, thank you so much, Harper. And one more quick announcement, Chris is going to be on standby if anybody needs to get their stuff to a hotel or to their place and get back. He's here to help with that. Let me know. I'll let him know. And we'll begin those shuttles as anybody needs, if they have that.
Sure. Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Kane. I am originally from the lands of the Dakota and Ojibwe people that's now known as Minnesota. I moved up here about 10 years ago and have been kind of chasing work in fisheries biology ever since all around the state with my partner, Mary Hostetter, who couldn't be here today because she's actually doing the work while I'm here presenting. I really would like to thank the community of Dillingham for allowing us to all come to this space and speak and present on our work, and also the schedule. No.
Fire.
Welcome you back.
All right, very good. And certainly thanks to the WAISC for putting this on. I know it's a huge lift. A couple of hiccups along the way, but really glad to be here and present on the work that's really inspiring my partner and I. So about 2 years ago, my partner Mary Hostetter, who's from Agyagig, really started to feel kind of a call to come home. And we since have developed kind of a strategy to bring some of the skills that we've developed along the way in fisheries biology and environmental biology to bring that back to this region here. So we moved back to Agyagig in August of last year. We applied for funding through a federal entity, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And right now we have funding to start the planning effort to develop a network of community-based monitoring programs within the Lake Iliamna and Lake Clark region. I sent a PDF, so challenging over there. So I imagine almost everybody in this room is familiar with community-based monitoring at this point. But generally speaking, community-based monitoring is monitoring for us, by us. It's built from within the community. The community is driving the objectives and prioritizing what we're actually looking for on the land. And that's very often not the case historically, and certainly in this region, a lot of the funding and researchers that are working in this region don't live in this region, and they have other priorities. So we're trying to flip that script and provide essentially the tools and accessibility for residents of our rural Bristol Bay communities to start to monitor this work and steward the region as they have always done. Go ahead. This is the only quote I'll read from my deck of slides here, but it's pretty powerful. The benefits of community-based monitoring programs have been documented in a lot of different ways, mainly through the network of Indigenous Guardians programs in Canada, which is what we're working towards. We're starting with community-based monitoring, but that's the cornerstone of a broader Indigenous Guardian network. And so this was spoken by Valerie Courtois. She is the Indigenous Leadership Initiative Director based in Canada. She said at a recent presentation that researchers have documented the impacts of these programs. They can reduce incarceration, increase health and well-being. People's health improves on the land because they're on the land, because they're physically active, and because they're happy. And Guardians gain increased skills, higher income, and pride in cultural knowledge. I believe that Indigenous programs could do more for healing from the impacts of colonialism than any other individual program. So that really just trying to speak to the benefits of these programs more holistically. It's not only about environmental monitoring, it's about empowering these communities to collect the data that's important to them and providing that skill set. And we're hoping to essentially provide just the foundation and the support necessary for individual communities to develop essentially their own individualized framework here. Go ahead. So in order to do that, early on, we identified the Indigenous Sentinels Network as one of our primary collaborators here. If you're familiar with the applications known as Bering Watch, Skipper Science, Fish Map app, all of those are curated by the Indigenous Sentinels Network based out of the Aleut community of St. Paul Island. And they've been around since the early 2000s, developing these suite of applications that really make a lot of this environmental monitoring a lot more accessible to individuals that may not have formal academic training to go and collect meaningful environmental observation data. So that partnership, we're now starting to work with the folks at ISN to start to kind of test out what these applications can do for the community of Agyagig right now. And working with them, they're kind of in a transition period right now in moving toward a platform that will be even more user-friendly and more accessible. So they're one of our primary partners, and the hope there, or I guess one of the broadest reasons that we really wanted to work with them too is, of course, data sovereignty is one of the most critical aspects of all this work that we're proposing here. So the data that is collected by individual communities will be owned by those communities and can be shared out if and when they choose to do so. So why should we develop community-based monitoring networks in Bristol Bay? I think that everybody here recognizes the importance of this ecosystem and how unique it is. And we're all here to protect it. We want to make sure this thrives for generations to come. So really, I think, even in just the past couple of days, it's been driven home at the swim conference that I was at, and certainly spending more time in a region, I've learned that most positions regarding environmental monitoring and stewardship in a professional sense are very woefully underfunded and understaffed. So what this can do, it can provide a nexus for what we might call true co-stewardship. It's a really popular buzzword that's going around right now, but a lot of people are having a very difficult time defining what that means and what that looks like. This is what that looks like. Go ahead. Here's a general timeline that we're dealing with within perhaps the next 3 to 5 years, I would say. We started off with securing the funding for the planning effort within the Lakes region, what we refer to as the Lake Clark and Lake Ileana region there. So we're working with those communities right now, and we've identified community liaisons or representatives that we're working with who will facilitate our ability to travel to these communities these summers to present more on the work we're proposing and spend time on their lands and waters to become further acquainted with what their priorities are. So that funding is secure. We're working within that framework for about the next year. But as we see it, the next step is to secure funding for this same effort, but broadening the geographic scope essentially to the entire Bristol Bay region. And then in the following year, perhaps in the funding cycle of 2024, we'll go out for implementation funding for the Lakes region and take the lessons learned and leverage those to implement all these programs within the greater Bristol Bay region here. And along the way, we're striving to address a lot of holistic priorities regarding how to provide housing for a lot of communities that are really struggling to have adequate housing. That's forcing a lot of residents that would otherwise really want to continue to reside in these communities, but it's forcing them out. Among other priorities, we know that in order for these to be successful and endure, they need to be integrated into schools because the kids are the future of what this could be. And so we're garnering support, of course, locally in Yagig to do that, but the goal certainly would be to implement this in a curriculum-based manner so that school is still good. So that it becomes kind of a cornerstone of that education, place-based education that makes sense for rural Alaska communities. And then our top priority is to develop a sustainable funding strategy. We're slowly working towards that, and we have time and the space to do it. And we're developing partnerships along the way. So we really don't think that's going to impede the longevity or the durability of these programs. We're pretty confident we're going to be able to come up with a way to continue to fund these for many generations. Right now, our funding is primarily coming from federal programs such as the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's America the Beautiful Challenge program. They are currently in they have an open RFP right now for the second year of that funding cycle. And we intend to continue to lean on that as long as they're supportive of the work we're doing out here. The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, speaking to private philanthropy, has about 2 years ago, they awarded the Yagig Village Council a substantial amount of money, essentially in like a block grant format to do with what Yagig kind of decided was one of their top priorities. And that funding really allowed us to get to where we are. It allowed me to be staying here today because I was able to more confidently quit my very secure and stable job with the state of Alaska to drop that and spend all my time focused on this. And nonprofits as well, we're partnering with. Nature Conservancy has been a huge partnership that we're developing here. And maybe one of the more recent components of that partnership is they're working with us to bring a USGS stream gauge back online within the outlet of Lake Iliamna. There are no active USGS stream gauges within the Lake Iliamna watershed, and that seems like the most important one because it's the drainage. And there are a lot of very dynamic hydrologic events occurring right now, and that complete data set and that consistent data set will allow us to expand a lot further on that. So we're really happy about that partnership and what it's allowed for us to do here. Go ahead. So really this, I'm here in kind of a marketing campaign. This is a call to action. That QR code has my contact info, as well as my partner, Mary Hostetter. And this is essentially what we're envisioning. This map here on the left, or on your right, sorry, this is the network we want to build. So the orange diamonds there that you see of course, are representing the Lakes region communities we're working with presently, and everything else within the rest of the Bristol Bay region. All the other communities are who we're trying to reach right now to essentially just get a nod to pursue. We're my partner Mary Hostetter and project partners are positioned right now to go out for another cycle of funding to include the entire Bristol Bay region over the course of the next 3 years in this planning effort to really build out this network to its full potential. And we really just need the nod of approval from community leadership to do that, but we're well positioned to do it, and we intend to submit that request for funding yet this year. This is also a call for support for researchers, for agency personnel. We think that there is incredible amount of room for collaboration in all of this work. And we certainly welcome any insights, partnership opportunities, and constructive criticism certainly too. It's time to incorporate that and build out these programs to their real potential. Okay. So with that, Guyana, this is sort of a network of the partnerships we're working with right now. They've, in some form or another, been thought partners, financial supporters, technical supporters, and we're actively building more partnerships to leverage, the maximum amount of information that we can to make these as robust as possible. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak here today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, you said you guys were looking hopefully through the school system getting some curriculum put in. Do you guys have a pilot format of that curriculum yet?
Yeah, it's pretty much all the work that we're doing is based off of Indigenous Guardians programs in Canada, and through, I think they're called Nature United, which is Canada's Nature Conservancy. Essentially, they're affiliated with one another. That partnership allowed the Indigenous Guardians programs to build what's known as the Indigenous Guardians Toolkit. It's open access online, and that is such a wonderful resource that's pretty comprehensive. That includes methods of incorporating these type of programs into educational curriculum.
What types of things do you foresee monitoring in the communities?
Sure. Yeah. Some of the things that are important to the community of Iqaluit, for instance, are the changing hydrologic conditions, the phenology, the changing timing of birds coming back, of plant succession, and shifting traditional resource availability, and how that's all pretty dynamic as well. We have, I think most communities probably have a pilot or two within their community. Presenting this to Iqaluit recently, a local pilot told me that he often spends time up in the air in his Super Cub, and he calls it altitude therapy, but just to get up and fly. And he offered to allow us to, develop a framework for wildlife monitoring from the air. And that way we can leverage, his time as match, and at the same time start to monitor a lot of the resources that other agencies don't have the funding to. And that maybe that speaks to a broader benefit of what this can provide. In order for other researchers or entities to get out to this area, of course, it is incredibly cost prohibitive. If we can empower local community members with these tools and provide them ways to collect data that's important to them, then if there's time available and maybe a smaller amount of funding from agencies or other nonprofits that, maybe there's data that they're interested in collecting, but these will be sentinels that will, can readily adapt to new protocols and hopefully go out and, collect data that would otherwise be too cost prohibitive